Hello, this is Mr. Hanna, and welcome to the format. We want to go over exponent rules today. Now, these are rules. This is the way it is, the way it works. You need to memorize these. You'll use these for when you're simplifying expressions, combining like bases. Now, that's the key here. Please notice that you have an a. I put it to the n power, a to the n. I'm multiplying, so they call this the product rule. When I multiply like bases, I can simply add the exponents, so n plus n. So here's an example. If I have x cubed times x squared, I can write that as x to the fifth. Okay, 3 plus 2. Now, okay, there's one that's very similar to this. I'm going to write it next to it. I didn't write it down at first. I wanted to wait and put it there because a lot of students get this confused. I'm going to take a to the m to the n. Okay, now this is called the power rule. So we got the product rule and the power rule. With this, we're going to multiply over here. This is a to the m times n. So if I have x cubed squared, that's going to be x to the sixth, 3 times 2. Now, here's the problem. A lot of students get these two mixed up. The way I remember it, that what's helpful for me is if you have 2 or more bases multiplying, that's when you add. Notice here there's only one base. One base, 2 powers. One base. Here you've got 2 bases. So that's how I differentiate. This is an adding. And again, I think one reason students get confused is that they think product. What am I doing? I'm multiplying. So they want to multiply the m times the n. You don't. You add them. Okay? If you want to see how that works, let's just quickly. X cubed is x times x times x. X squared is x times x. And if you rewrite that, how many x's are there? Well, that's x to the fifth. Here, x cubed squared. Well, x cubed is x times x times x, and you're timesing it by x times x times x. Notice that you have your 6 x's. So that's how and why that works. Product rule, power rule. Now, quotient rule, pretty easy to see. You're dividing, okay? And minus n, that's subtraction, okay? Then we have an exponent with multiple numbers in the parentheses. So basically, you distribute the exponent to each thing inside the parentheses, a to the n, b to the n. Now, please be careful. Here's how this would look if I had 2x squared, right? Or, yeah. So that's going to be 2 squared x squared, which is going to be 4x squared, okay? Do not make the mistake of thinking that's 4x squared, okay? An exponent only applies to the number to its immediate left. If you want it to apply to more, you need parentheses around it. Now this includes negatives. Negative x squared and negative x squared are not the same thing. Be very, very careful of that. This will be x squared. This is going to stay negative x squared because that negative is not being squared. Watch for that. Next thing, anything to the 0 power is 1. It doesn't matter what it is. Anything to the 0 power is 1, not 0. I have a lot of students mix that up. Also negative exponents. Negative exponents doesn't make you negative. What it does is it reciprocates you. So this a reciprocates 1 over a. Well, 1 to any power is just itself, so that's why they put the 1 here. But basically, the way I think of it is it moves. If I'm a negative exponent and I'm in the numerator, I go to the denominator. If I'm in the denominator, I go to the numerator. How would that look? Well, let's take a look. So I got x to the negative 3 over y to the negative 2. This is in the numerator, so it's going to move down. So x cubed. This is in the denominator, so it's going to move up. That's how negative powers work. They do not make the answer negative. I see a lot of students making that mistake. Now, sorry, these are your exponent rules. Plain and simple. And you need to memorize them and watch for these little format changes. Now, please note at this point, going forward, a lot of the things you've learned in algebra are going to come back, but come back with stuff added to them and different orders and steps and formats of things. A lot of what you've learned is still there, but it looks different, it feels different. If you don't connect what you're learning with what you've known previously and put it all together, that's at this point that algebra becomes pretty much impossible to understand. It requires you to memorize certain things and to pay attention to what you're looking at, not go too fast, not take things for granted, not get complacent. It requires you to think. And I'm noticing with a lot of students, that's just a lost art form anymore. Students don't like to think. They want the answer given to them. They want the problem to be quick and dirty and easy. And at this point in algebra, things got to get a lot more complicated. Okay, simplifying some of these problems can get very interesting, especially when you add variables. Now, keep in mind, these exponent rules only apply when the bases are the same. Okay, notice I didn't do 2 minus 3. Why? Because that's a y and that's an x. We don't combine them when they're in that way. This is very important to see. Also notice that where your parentheses in makes a difference. Also notice we've got, let's say, a fraction, right? Let's say we have a over b to the n. That would also be distributive. Okay? We're going to take that as a to the n over b to the n. So that should cover pretty much all the situations you're going to face. But now keep in mind that what they're going to do is they're going to mix numbers and variables together. You could have a lot of terms on the top, or variables and numbers on the top, a lot on the bottom. I like to think of it as separate problems. If I have x, y, and z in the top and x, y, and z in the bottom, I take it as 3 problems. I do the x's, then I do the y's, then I do the z's. And because those are the only ones that combine. And you could be multiplying on top or dividing or any combination of those or both of them. So just be aware that this is where things start to get really complicated. You have to see each rule and know how to each rule, and you have to take it a step at a time. You have to think, you have to pay attention, you have to know what you're doing. Okay, from this point on, things get crazy with algebra and more complicated, and they just keep going from there. Calculus students, a lot of calculus students I've helped in the past, their problem wasn't with the calculus, it was with the complicated algebra. They just weren't used to the algebra, had not faced anything that complicated, they had trouble with it. So this is a point where you get lost here, you might never catch up. So very important to pay attention to these rules, memorize them. Same thing with the other rules you have. Go back, make sure the videos I've done before, you need to know those. All that stuff is coming back in some form or another going forward, and you need to know those things. Anyway, hopefully this helps with your exponent rules. Hopefully you can see everything to do and why, and that you memorize them and pay attention again to the details. But this has been Mr. Hanna with What the Format. Thank you for watching. Happy mathing.